Is that noise a problem? The state? Yeah. Let's ask him. Hey, Jason? Can you shut the car off? Can you just shut the car off?
You're buying fries to replace this.
I mean, it does smell good.
All right. So, folks, we are going to get started now. We'll start with Univision.
So in your last days visiting the southern border, what has been some of the things that you've noticed the most when it comes to the community and the migrants or the people asking for asylum?
Well, first of all, I just want to say how grateful I am that Senator Lankford has made yet another visit down to the southern border in Arizona, and specifically to come here to Nogales and see what the Tucson sector is experiencing. We've had a really good trip over the last 2 days, learning from folks on the ground about what's working, and more importantly and more frequently, what's not working. So we both have a lot of observations I think we want to share today, but one thing that I'll mention is how struck I was by seeing our Border Patrol agents who are spending the majority of their time processing asylum seekers and migrants and spending very little time actually out in the field looking for individuals who are seeking to enter the country unlawfully or interdicting the trafficking of drugs. Now, one thing we know about the Tucson sector is that this is the only sector of the U.S.-Mexico border where more drugs, fentanyl in particular, are interdicted outside of the ports of entry than at the ports of entry. So we know that massive amounts of drugs are coming through between our ports of entry. And what we learned today is that our Border Patrol agents don't have the manpower to actually go and catch the movement of that drugs effectively because their resources are being pulled away to do processing for applications for asylum, which, to be clear, is not their mission and not their job. So I'm concerned about what that means for our entire country, with the almost unfettered flow of drugs into our country, along with smugglers who are seeking to evade detection and do who knows what bad things in our country when they arrive. So that's one thing we've learned today.
Yeah, I've been down the border multiple times in multiple different areas in different states as well, to be able to determine what's actually happening in that location, what's changed since the last time. Obviously, we're all looking for legislative solutions and trying to be able to form bipartisan coalitions to be able to actually address the long-term issue. This time it really struck me how many times the Border Patrol agents over the last 2 days have said to me the population has significantly changed of who's coming over the border. Fewer Spanish speakers, more people from the Middle East, from Pakistan. They just interdicted someone from Russia. They're interdicting more people on the terror watch list. They're identifying more individuals that they come across have a longer criminal record. The population is dramatically changing here coming across the border in this particular area, and they're more and more concerned about the national security risk. And for most every country that they're dealing with as they're coming across, we don't have criminal records coming from that country. Some of the Latin American countries we have criminal record exchanges from, but when we're talking about individuals coming from Russia, we know almost nothing about those individuals, whether they're here for asylum seeking or whether they're here to be able to do us harm. Those numbers are dramatically increasing, and there's a very real concern on the national security risk.
And you know, I want to kind of double down on that point because for some of the folks here, and I know many of our viewers, like myself, were born and raised in Arizona. So we've been used to immigration issues our entire lives. We've seen a broken border. We've seen the federal government not manage this effectively. But what's different about now than from when we were growing up is the nature of who's coming into the country. It is radically different than it used to be. And as James was saying, the people who are coming from places all far-flung around the world, some of those people might be coming legitimately to seek asylum, but we know that some of these individuals are coming after already being engaged in cybersecurity breaches, in attacks on our country, or, as Senator Lankford just said, on the terror watch list. So it's a radically different kind of movement across the border than it was when you and I were growing up.
Arizona Republic.
Senator Sinema, can you give me your thoughts on the line of people, about 100 people right now, just outside of the Picancini port of entry? Were you able to see the line of people just waiting to be processed? Can you tell me what you think about that?
So this morning, Senator Lankford and I actually toured the Picancini port of entry, and we met with our Customs and Border Protection agents who are spending their time, including overtime, processing asylum applicants day in and day out. A couple things to note. This port of entry is using the new app, the CBP One app, which creates a more orderly process. That's helpful. It is safer for those migrants and it's safer for our agents. However, it doesn't mean that the line of people has gotten smaller. So while we noted yesterday that the big scrum that came in right around the end of Title 42 is down to a lower number, the length of that list has not changed. There's still hundreds of thousands of folks in Mexico waiting to come in. And this makes sense from a cartel perspective, right? The criminal cartels want to bring in a manageable number of people every single day so that the border protection agents are busy all day long processing these applications. And again, just a number of hours and then days processing them and then releasing them into the country. But because they're spending all of their time doing that, no time is being spent looking for the bad guys out in the wilderness. So that's something that we saw with those lines today. We actually saw the agents who were spending every moment of their shift processing these individuals. As Senator Lankford mentioned, for most of these individuals, we don't know what their criminal background is. And so many of these folks are being released into the interior, and we don't know if these are good guys or bad guys. That's one of the challenges that we're facing, and it's something that we heard as a stress point for the agents that we talked with today.
All right, we're going to go with KLD.
Yes. You mentioned that a lot of the agents, they're spending time processing and helping them out as opposed to being out in the field. In your talks with them, are there any other concerns that they have raised apart from not being out in the field?
Yeah, let me tell you an example of what we heard today. So right now, you can claim asylum if you use the CBP One app and show up in line at the port of entry. You can also claim asylum if you just show up at the port of entry without an appointment. You can also claim asylum if you arrive at the border in the desert and then call for help. So when Border Patrol comes out to rescue you, you can claim asylum at that time. So here's what's happening. A group of 30 migrants will come to the border. They will call for help. When Border Patrol arrives, 15 of those individuals, maybe women, children, family units, will stay and ask for that help. And Border Patrol will then put them in the vehicles and take them back to the station for processing. The other 15 will scatter into the desert because they don't want to be detected. Now, who comes into the country that doesn't want to be detected? Folks with criminal records, folks who are smuggling drugs, folks who are here to do other illegal activities in the country. But right now, because they're coming in together, our Border Patrol agents have to, from a humanitarian level, go help the folks who are asking for help. At one spot of the border that we were at today, we saw a bottle partially filled on the ground and a tiny onesie made for an infant 6 months and younger. So we know that folks are bringing very tender-aged children to this area. Border Patrol is spending their time rescuing those individuals, and the bad guys are getting away.
No, it's a significant issue, and there's a lot of stresses for them. They're not only dealing with trying to get commerce going, pedestrians that are just coming back and forth to be able to shop and to be able to be here. We've got rail traffic that's coming through consistently, trying to be able to inspect that. We have southbound traffic that they were able to show us recently, firearms that were going southbound. They were able to interdict and to be able to stop those firearms. So they've got people that are coming through with I-94s, legitimate legal requests. They've got people that are coming into the process for asylum, CBP One app. They're trying to inspect traffic to go through. So the stressors around this area and the number of things they've got to be able to carry is significant, and the number of asylum pieces on top of it adds a significant amount of stress on top of everything else.
That's right. But it's the perfect recipe for cartels to exploit. While our agents in both blue and green are spending their time processing folks, the bad guys are getting through.
Just a quick follow-up, I'm sorry. Would you say that the solution is as simple as hiring more agents, or is it more complex and deeper than that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the solution has to be multi-pronged. So we do have to make reforms to the tools that we offer our Border Patrol agents and our CBP. Those are the guys and gals in blue at the ports of entry. So at the ports of entry, they need more tools to detect illicit goods, right? Like smuggling drugs that come through, maybe under a parcel of grapes, right? Or built into a car. But we also need more tools for Border Patrol agents. We need more Border Patrol agents. We need them freed up to do their jobs rather than transporting and processing migrants. But they also need additional fencing to close the gaps that exist, and they need more technology so they can have cameras and detection on the ground, more cameras so they can have situational awareness. We have several miles of border that have no road. So migrants can run through that and Border Patrol agents can't go get them. That's where dangerous guys go. That's where drugs go. So we need to do that. But we also need to reform the asylum system. And this is something that Senator Lankford and I have been talking about a lot. What are some of the ideas that we've been working on to reform it?
Yeah, very basic issues on the asylum process. The asylum process is designed to be able to deal with people that legitimately qualify for asylum. We have a very high percentage of folks that request asylum that in the years now of backlog, when they get to that spot and actually get to the court hearing, actually find out they don't qualify for it.
If they show up to their hearing.
If they show up for their hearing at all. So the challenge is we've got to have a faster screening process, a higher threshold of what it actually means to get asylum so that we can get legitimate asylum seekers into the country faster, and people that are just trying to be able to use a loophole into the system to be able to get into the country and not do the legal process. We've got to tell them, hey, there is a legal way to be able to come into the country. We want you to do those legal processes, not try to be able to skirt around it. So right now the asylum piece is a very significant part about this, getting clear definitions, who qualifies, who does not qualify, and actually getting their hearings faster.
We've also got to have some sort of system that provides accountability. So if someone comes in between a port of entry, we should be able to say, no, that's not how you claim asylum, right? And if you want to claim asylum, here are the appropriate ways to do it. But right now there's no consequence for not following the rules or following the process. And so that's Congress's job. So we've identified 2 areas that Congress should take action in order to address this. But we can't just do one or the other, right? We've got to do them both together.
All right, Kagan.
That was going to be my next question. With Congress, what do you think the next steps are for making everything you guys have talked about possible?
Well, the good news is that it's not just Senator Lankford and I. We're working with a coalition of both Republicans and Democrats in the Senate. As I like to say, the workhorses, not the show horses, who are actually interested in solving this problem. And we talk literally every single day with each other. We're texting each other in the mornings, afternoons, talking about ideas for solutions on how we can actually solve this problem. We recognize that it's not just about talking points on television. It has to be the real work of finding that middle ground of solving both of these challenges in a realistic and pragmatic way.
Yeah, this is a long-term issue. There's no one in Arizona that's shocked that there are issues with a broken border system. This is a long-term issue that we've got to resolve. 20 years ago, Canada actually worked on what their legal process would be and how they would handle this. They passed an updated law dealing with asylum. They passed updated laws on this. We're 20 years behind Canada in this, just be able to address some basic issues. Our biggest challenge is Congress can't seem to find a deadline for it. You know, we talk about deadlines for debt ceiling right now, and everyone sees that clear date. What's the deadline to solve immigration? Well, there's not one. There's a crisis that's happened on the border, but it's gone on for years and years and years. Everyone's like, oh, it'll get solved someday. Well, we're trying to be able to push our colleagues to say, we've got to sit at the table. We have lots of other issues as a nation we've got to deal with, but this is really important, not just to this region, but to the entire country, to make sure we have an orderly process for immigration and that people that mean to do the nation harm aren't slipping through the cracks based on loopholes in our system. So we are actively working on this and building a larger and larger coalition. But I would say the single biggest issue that we got to do is not to have some secret plan that we present to the rest of the group. This got to be done in the sunshine, where there's amendment processes, everybody can talk about it, everyone can have input that wants to have input, but get it through the committees, get it in the open process on it, let's have the argument, but let's actually work to solve it, not just argue about it.
The good news is that the chair and the ranking member of the border subcommittee are standing right here in front of you. So you've got a team that's interested and willing to do this. And you know, like I said, you know, we've been bringing folks down to the border over and over again. This is the 3rd delegation, bipartisan delegation, that I've been privileged to bring down to the border region in Arizona just this year. So we're working in a bicameral way and a bipartisan way. This can't be just the Senate, it can't be just the House, it can't be just one party or the other. We have to do this together, because in Arizona, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, Republican, or an independent, and it doesn't matter whether you live in Nogales or Douglas or Naco or Yuma. We're all struggling with the same crisis. Right?
KVOA. Pass? No. Okay. All right, we'll go to NBC News.
Senators, you laid out a whole host of issues you're trying to address. One thing I think people don't really notice until they come to a border community is how much these towns are reliant on people coming over to work here, to shop here. I mean, we've seen it just
To go to
since-
school.
To go to school here. We've seen it just since the pedestrian crossing opened. Are you looking at addressing that problem as well to help the border communities basically be able to have their economies fluster?
Yes. So one of the big challenges we're facing right now is with the end of Title 42, without a reasonable plan in place, we're seeing the cartels continue to exploit the asylum process by bringing in a steady flow of migrants every day. And as Senator Lankford was mentioning, that disrupts the other business that happens at our legal ports of entry. Right now, we're entering grape season, right? So if we have to slow down the movement of grapes from Mexico into the U.S., that affects not just Arizona's economy, not just the border town of Nogales, that affects our entire country. We have H-2 visas, H-2B visas. These are visas that people lawfully come and work for a company in the U.S. If the port of entry can't process the appropriate number of those visa holders every single day, business owners in parts of the country all around, from Arizona to Mississippi to Oklahoma, can't get the employees they need to work in a farm or a factory. So the impact of this exploitation of the asylum process affects every other part, not just of our border communities, but actually the economy of our country. And I think a lot of people who haven't traveled to a border community haven't seen that up close, but it makes a huge difference for the communities who come to school and come to work and come here for commerce every day, as well as to the interior of the country, where goods come from Mexico into Arizona and then fan throughout the U.S.
Senator Lankford, if you could just speak to that, because I know Republicans, especially who aren't from border states, I know you're here in a bipartisan manner, but you know there is this conversation of maybe we don't need migrants, right?
What I hear the most is the chaos that's happening here at the border, the uncontrolled management of this, and trying to be able to manage the chaos rather than try to be able to build a strong legal pathways process on this. Getting legal pathways is a much better way to do this. I find very few people in America, Republican, Democrat, Independent, that are opposed to legal immigration. The kind of movement that happens here in this particular community, where people are moving back and forth across the border in legal manners on that, that's widely accepted. What people get really frustrated with is when there's unchecked illegal immigration, when we have individuals moving into the country that we literally don't know their background, we don't know where they're headed, we don't know who they're connected to, and we don't know if they're fleeing poverty or if they're fleeing justice from their home countries, especially now with the dramatic increase in the number of people that are non-Spanish speakers that are coming across our borders from Russia, from Pakistan, from Mauritania, from other areas of West Africa, from all these different regions where we haven't had folks before. There's not a language connection here, and we don't know what the connection is and where they're coming from. Or an individual coming from Russia, we have no idea what their legal background is, or if they're here to do us harm, or if they're here to try to seek a job. We don't know. And that national security issue has to be addressed with a legal, orderly process.
So closing the asylum loophole, instituting actual security on our border, and then creating more legal pathways for folks to come here to work, that together helps solve that challenge. It ensures that we have the workers that we need, that only good people are coming into the country, and that border communities such as Nogales, where we are today, can continue to have a vibrant cross-border trade and economy.
Can one happen without the other, or do you want to move all of this together? through Congress?
They'll move together.
They'll move together.
Yeah, they'll move together because, again, all these issues are interconnected.
That's
on
right.
this. When you're dealing with slowing the flow of illegal migration, you're putting up the stop sign and say, we're not going to do illegal migration anymore. We're not going to do that. But we are going to do this.
That's right.
It is the most classic statement of wide gates and tall fences, where we have the opportunity for individuals to be able to come and to be able to work here, or to be able to visit family, or to be able to do tourism or commerce or whatever it may be. But we also are vetting individuals. There's so many people that I talk to that say, well, these folks have all been checked. The folks that are coming across the border, they've all been checked. What they don't know is actually they've just been fingerprinted. We don't have any criminal records from where they're coming from. We have no idea their criminal background in any way there. No one's really been vetted other than are they on their terror watch list. So people are making assumptions that the federal government is watching out for their own security
They can't.
when there's just no way to be able to keep up with the number of people that are moving and how fast it's happening.
The reality is that right now, international criminal cartels like Sinaloa, they are the ones who chooses. They get to choose who comes into this country right now, not us. It is not the United States government that's choosing who enters the country. It's the cartels. They're the ones who decide who gets in which line and what day they come. They're the ones who say you can put in the app, you can get in line. They're choosing who comes in the country. And what our guys are doing, because of the resources and the flow, are basically just doing an initial body check and then sending them on and releasing them into the interior.
All right, folks, we're about to wrap up. Any last questions?
You talked about asylum reform and seeking for asylum in the right way. What do you think the right way would be if this
Well, it's
were
kind of
to-
a long answer, but one of the things that we've talked about is creating pathways and rules around applying for asylum that are pretty strict and have consequences. So right now, like we said, someone can show up in the middle of the desert and when apprehended by a Border Patrol agent can say, I'm here to claim asylum, and there's no repercussion for them. That is not the appropriate way to seek asylum. So there are a number of ideas of first applying in another safe third country before coming to the U.S., making sure you have an appointment, doing some initial interviews early on to see if there's a basic qualification. Right now, only about 10% of the people who are claiming asylum will ultimately be granted asylum. The other 90% are migrants who are coming, some for good reasons, but don't actually qualify for asylum. And so one of the things that we've been talking about is to raise the standard so that we're questioning folks sooner, getting more information earlier before they get onto American soil, and so we can tell them, yes, you have a chance of qualifying, or no, you're never going to qualify. You don't meet the threshold. Those are some things that we can do to actually help reduce the flow and send a consequence regime so the cartels know that they can no longer use this as their money-making scheme.
And again, this is not a radical concept. In Europe, in Canada, multiple places, they deal with asylum issues and trying to be able to get clearer definitions of asylum. We're just looking to be able to get clear definitions so that everyone knows who does qualify, who does not qualify. People are coming from literally Uzbekistan. Last time I was in Yuma, there were more people from Uzbekistan that had crossed that week than there was from El Salvador that week.
That was in January.
Yeah, and so they literally flying to 7 different countries to be able to travel to be able to get here and then claim asylum. We asked the first question, why here? If you travel into Canada, if they say, did you come to the United States, did you request asylum there first? And you say no, they would say that you don't qualify in that. You can't just pick and choose on this. People may want to come to the United States. It's the greatest country in the world. I understand why the people want to be able to come. But we need to create legal pathways to be able to do that and not just have exceptions to the rule that you can work around.
That's right. The big challenge right now is that because there is no consequence regime, there are no consequences for coming in either through the app and lining up or through the border regions. Folks who have no chance of getting asylum are just coming in and then disappearing into the interior of the country. That's dangerous for national security. It's also not fair to those individuals because they will not have a path to citizenship in the future, right? So the changes that we want to make are about creating a legal and orderly pathway for those who will qualify. And then for those who don't, letting them know before they make the trek to the U.S. that this is not a path for them. Thanks all.
Thank you guys.
We're good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Senators.